Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you an extra special review of a Goosebumps short story that was released in a TV guide. Yes, you heard me correctly, a TV guide. And trust me, this is not the first time, or the last time, this phenomenon has happened in kids' horror. This story was released in 1997 in the March 15th through 21st issue, and the story in question is The Homemade Monster. Yes. On the cover, right above Elmo here, you can read, exclusive, an original spine-tingling tale from Goosebumps creator R.L. Stine. And inside, we get about 2 to 3-ish pages worth of content here for this little short tale. All in all, I think the page count would have been comparable to a Haunted Library mini book, or maybe a little bit less than what those books were able to bring in terms of content. So I will be judging this story here on a short story basis. Given all that though, for something this niche and something this obscure in the Goosebumps repertoire of stories out there in the ether, I thought that this story was really fun. And honestly, this could have been fleshed out into a normal length short story and possibly even an episode. It has a lot of elements of what made some stories really great in Tales Book 4. This is a Halloween-centered one, or it has that vibe of Halloween. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll get the gist of it if you read this story, or if you're lucky enough to come across this. I had a blast with this. Now, it's not the greatest thing ever. It does have some flaws, but if you're interested in checking out more niche Goosebumps stuff, maybe pick this up online, or if you're out there thrifting or out there at some secondhand store that may have vendors with collections of these old TV guides, and you come across this, pick this up. I mean, it's a cool little piece of Goosebumps history, and the story's not half bad. So let's get into what you're going to expect out of this. There's not a lot to go over, but the story is essentially about two siblings, Holly and Max. And Holly is the main character of the story, or at least she's the narrator of it. And the story starts off with her and her brother out in the family garage trying to put this monster together. And the way this monster is described is very creepy and eerie. It has like green bulging skin with like lumps all over it. It has bulging yellow eyes. One of them's been smashed in accidentally. And they've been putting this monster together from this kit that they found, but the monster isn't working and turning on when they put the batteries inside. And the kids are absolutely frustrated, especially Holly's younger brother, Max. And Holly goes into the backstory of why they've come to this scenario. And in the backstory, you get to learn that over the past few weeks, Holly and her brother Max have had some issues going on with their neighbors. They're kind of like mean old grouches that live on both sides. One is Mrs. Gavin, and the other is Mr. Markham. Mrs. Gavin just seems like a mean old lady that just doesn't want the kids on her property and all that, and thinks that they're basically a nuisance and has constantly pestered them over the years. And Mr. Markham acted like a jerk when Max wrecked his bike, I guess, in Mr. Markham's driveway, and he cut his knee open. And Mr. Markham seemed more concerned with there being blood on his driveway than the well-being of Max. And the kids have come to the point where the neighbors kind of just need something mean done to them. So this is more of a mean-spirited story. So basically, as they're trying to come up with ways to get some revenge on them, they stumble across a monster-making kit in like an alley by a dumpster. Very Night of the Living Dummy-esque. And they get this idea to put this monster together because on the kit, it says you can get revenge on your neighbors and teach them a lesson, stuff like that. And it seems perfectly advertised to what they're doing. Yes, there's plot convenience, but that's due to page constraints for this. You got to remember, this was put in a TV guide of all places. So after you get that backstory, it cuts back to the present events where they have put this monster together, but they've kind of fumbled some of the pieces, messed up one of the eyeballs in a gross way. And they can't get it to work, so they begrudgingly go back into their home to get ready for bed. But while they're in bed that night, they hear some noises outside, and they look out to their garage where they left this monster, and basically they witness this monster break through the garage door and head straight to their back door. And the kids freak out, and they go down to inspect the back door, and this monster thing breaks through. And after it breaks through, Holly and Max are mortified, and they don't know what to do. And the monster comes up, follows them upstairs to their room, and essentially reveals something about what it actually is. And it might entail to clever wording on the packaging, let's just say that. And the monster may or may not do something grisly to these kids in kind of like a gross body horror way, which I thought was kind of cool for this short of a story. And then the ending ends off on a kind of happy note where the kids are kind of optimistic, looking forward to the events of what's going to come after this ending here. And that's essentially what you're going to expect out of the Homemade Monster. Yeah, that was a very short plot synopsis. There's not a lot to go over here. But yeah, let's start off with the positives with this. R.L. Stine himself wrote this story, at least that's what it was advertised, and it was marketed as a Goosebumps tale, which makes this an official Goosebumps story. And putting aside the novelty that a Goosebumps story was put inside of a TV guide, which you don't, if you don't know, R.L. Stine got the name Goosebumps from a TV guide. So go figure, right? But this was actually a really cool idea. The fact, like, as much as I don't like the mean-spirited Goosebumps tales, I think Holly and Max, given what we got in the parameters of this story, had enough just cause to want to do something mean to their grouchy older neighbors because they're just not pleasant people and they don't really care about kids. So in their perspective, they think that maybe teaching them a lesson will, you know, get back at them for making them feel bad about themselves, I guess. So it's kind of understandable here. You don't get much of a monologue or I guess any in-depth character stuff with these two, so you have to go off surface level things. But they seem fun enough. They seem like they're creative and willing to, you know, try something new and experiment around with things. And I think that those are good traits in a character that easily could be fleshed out in a full book. The concept alone is super fun and engaging. The way this story describes this homemade monster creature is very creepy. And I think in the context of like some Goosebumps monsters that I've read in the past, the description of this is kind of eerie. And there's actually an image inside of this. I don't want to open it because I have it sealed right now. But besides the point, the image on the artwork looked kind of silly, just because the way the artwork depicted the character. But the description in the story was very well done. And the whole going from the sequence of events starting with the present, going back in time, giving some backstory, exposition, and then going back to current events has been done before in Goosebumps, but I like it here because it kind of shows, it kind of shows very early on in the story the frustration of the kids, and it goes into a deeper way of explaining it. And I feel like if Stine would have rearranged the events, it wouldn't have clicked the same. So I can appreciate the layout of it. And then getting down to the buildup of the story, all the way down to how they acquired it, how they started putting it together, how creepy that sounded. And then the climax of just thinking about how this would have looked in my, looked in real life if I was in my house or something. And I look out to my garage and I see a giant hulking monster bulging out of the door of my garage, breaking through, coming through the back door after me. That's scary and legitimately threatening. And what this monster does to the kids is actually horrifying and kind of messed up. Yeah, it's kind of loose how that works. There may or may not be some supernatural things going on there. I don't really get how that's physically possible, but, if you put some disbelief at the door, it's kind of morbid and creepy. And I commend Stine for doing that. And even in this story's context here, it was very well done. And I actually like the ending to it. I thought that was kind of clever and kind of funny. So good for you, Stein, for writing a little funny, quirky ending for once. So yeah, lots of positives. My only negatives here really come down to a few things that I don't think the story can really help on its own. I would say the pace of this story is very quick. There's, you know, this is meant to be a one and done, very quick experience type of story. You're not supposed to sit here and dwell on things too much. But for the concept being as good as it was, I just wish there was more there. If I'm grading this on normal short story basis, there's just not enough page space to work with here, like a Tales to Give You Goosebumps short story. And a lot of the times in Tales to Give You Goosebumps, the biggest negative I can have is that the page constraints and the ideas it has, if it does it well, is it enough there to get the idea across? Is the story biting off more than it could chew? I feel like here there's something mild to that effect. I feel like it needs just a little more backstory of how they acquired this monster-making kit, a little more backstory on these neighbors and some more interactions with them. I feel like we're kind of missing some personality coming from the neighbors. We're just being told how they've behaved, and we don't get to experience these neighbor characters to really understand the gravity of the situation. And those things stick out like sore thumbs and do kind of hurt it. In a short story way, that is kind of detrimental, but not deal-breaking all the way. So all in all, this is going to be a very short review. I think that this is a above average short story for Goosebumps standards, but it's not quite great. And since I only do 0.5 or I guess 0.25 increments for short stories, from a 0 to 5 star basis, with those issues I have, I decided to give this short story about a 4 out of 5 stars. I was pleasantly surprised with this. I had a fun enough time. I think most of you will out there. So yeah, let me know down in the comment section if you've read The Homemade Monster before. Do you love this or do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.